Hey, good morning. This is Rebecca Simon Peter with Spiritual Mojo, and this is 15 minutes to uplift your spirit, uphold your consciousness, and up level your faith. I'm so pleased that you're here today. It's really great to have you here. I love this community. I love the kinds of stuff that we're talking about, and I want you to put in the comments where you're watching from. Say hi, and what do you love about this community? So during the 40 days of apostleship, here we are, we're looking at how to expand our faith from the faith of a disciple to the faith of an apostle. It's a big shift. It's a big spiritual leap. And that actually means up leveling your faith from believing in Jesus to believing like Jesus. My theory is that those who believe like Jesus can do the kinds of things that Jesus did, which he said we would do, even greater things than him. So we got to make that spiritual leap. And that's what the 40 days of apostleship are all about. So we're looking at, what did Jesus actually believe? And one of the things that he believed that we're going to talk about today is that prayer has power. Say that with me. Prayer has power. Prayer has power. Consider the chutzpah, that Yiddish word. Consider the chutzpah it took for Jesus to call forth a very dead Lazarus from the grave, right? Yet he preceded that bold action with a prayer. Father, he said, thank you that you have heard me. I know you always hear me. And only after that prayer did he cry out, Lazarus, come out. So Jesus believed that prayers have power. Now, here's the really cool thing, people. Here's what I want you to pay attention to. Not only did Jesus believe that his prayers had power, he absolutely believed your prayers have power. He absolutely believed your prayers have power too. I mean, listen to the audacious advice that he gave in the Bible in several places. He says, whatever you ask in prayer, just sit with that. Whatever you ask in prayer, believe that you have received it and it will be yours. Whatever you have asked in prayer, believe that you have received it and it will be yours. Jesus believes your prayers have power too. And I just think that's nuts. Whatever you believe. Yeah. I tell you the truth, Jesus says in the Gospels, if you have faith and you don't doubt, not only can you do what was done to this poor fig tree. You may remember that the fig tree, because of what Jesus said, but you can also say to this mountain, go, throw yourself into the sea, and it will be done. Your prayers have power. If you believe, Jesus says, you will receive whatever you ask for in prayer. Now, that is just so outrageous that it might actually be true. It might actually be true. So did you catch that? When you believe like Jesus, you can ask for whatever you want in prayer, no matter how outrageous it is. All it takes is faith and belief. But here's the thing. Most of us don't operate on pure faith and pure belief. We have it, but we have it intermittently. And what happens is that we have periods of allowing and then we have periods of disallowing. We open up and we shut down. We open up and we shut down. So I want to share with you how I look at prayer. This is how I visualize prayer working. I envision that there's this constant conveyor belt of blessing and abundance that flows from God to us, right? Everybody's got their own conveyor belt. You ask, God answers. And in fact, the moment you ask, the answer to that prayer gets plopped down on the conveyor belt and it begins to make its way to you. But along the way, there's that opening, that allowing and that disallowing, that opening and that closing. So when we begin to second guess or we worry about our ability to handle the blessing or integrating this new state of affairs into our lives that the answered prayer would bring, then we shut down. And I think that's when the conveyor belt, lurches to a stop or actually even begins to move backwards when we say, no thanks, I'm not really sure about it. So these doubts, if they're strong enough, if they're long enough, they can really derail this blessing that's on its way to us. And we can unintentionally work at cross purposes with our prayer. And that's why we think that scripture isn't true, right? But Jesus says it is true. So we have to look within ourselves. Where are we shutting down? Where are we flipping the switch on the conveyor belt and sending it backwards? So put that in the comments section. Where do you flip that switch so that the conveyor belt lurches to a halt or begins to move backwards? Love to see what you have to say about that. But also, what would you like to believe is actually coming to you on the conveyor belt, even if it hasn't already made its way to you? So, this is a really powerful way to look at prayer because then we can actually trust the words of Jesus and look to see where's the gap within our own life. It doesn't make us wrong and it doesn't make Jesus wrong and it doesn't make God wrong. We're just looking to see where are the places that have shut down that we can open back up so that our belief can open up and our doubt can diminish and we can be in alignment with those really powerful words of Jesus that whatever we believe and ask for in prayer, we can have. It's a matter of keeping that faith open. It's a matter of keeping the belief open and not allowing the self doubt to shut her down. So, how do you begin to embrace the belief? We're going to talk about this during the 40 days of purpose because it's not just the 40 days of apostleship. Excuse me. It's not just knowing what Jesus believed. It's actually working on allowing that to be true in our lives as well. So I want to share a story with you. This is a great story, and this is how I started small, how I began to embrace that belief of Jesus's. So this was from a couple of years ago. I began to experiment with it, and when it came to the belief that prayer had power, I decided to ask God for something small, sort of inconsequential, where I wouldn't have this automatic resistance to it, but I could really stay open to it, where I wouldn't trip over the wires of self doubt. So I asked God to gift me with a gift of a mug. You know, mugs are a dime a dozen, right? So I didn't have any resistance like, oh, nobody's going to have a mug to give me. And I just said, God, I'd like you to have someone gift me with a mug. And I practiced believing it, that I had received the mug by visualizing the act of opening my hands. I saw a mug placed in it, and I practiced that for a couple of times. And I rehearsed the feeling of happiness that would come with it, you know, when somebody placed a mug in my hands. And then honestly, I forgot about it after that. I just forgot about it. Well, one afternoon, 3 or 4 weeks later, my doorbell rang, the front doorbell rang, and I opened up the doorbell, I opened up the door, and I saw somebody I didn't recognize. It was a guy. And I said, can I help you? And he said, I'm Willie. And he pulled out from nowhere a mug. He said, this mug is for you. And he handed over this slightly misshapen blue ceramic coffee mug. And he said, well, it's for your husband, actually. I made it for him after the last construction job that we finished. And it's been sitting on the floor of my pickup truck, rolling around there for months. And I just never got around to stopping by until today. And I could hardly believe it. You know, here I had asked God weeks earlier for somebody to put a mug in my hand. And this guy, you know, rings the doorbell and puts a mug in my hand. And I just beamed and I said, thank you. You wouldn't believe it, but this is exactly what I've been praying for. So it was the craziest thing. Now, a coffee mug is awesome, right? To see this actually come to pass. When we think about it, a coffee mug is, it's not that big a deal. But believing like Jesus really is. I mean, mastering the art of believing without doubt, mastering the art of allowing the prayer to be answered. That's a really big deal. And it allows you to have the kind of impact on the world that Jesus was predicting, greater than him. Could you imagine, 7 billion Jesuses on the planet, 1 billion Jesuses on the planet, 2 billion Jesuses on the planet? How about just two Jesuses? That would be incredible. So that's what Jesus is calling to, is to believe without self-doubt and allow that belief in the power of prayer to really come to fruition. So I personally am working on this now. I'm graduating from coffee mugs. I've got this really big dream that I am envisioning coming to pass over the next 10 years. And it's this: it's to flip the church from decline to renewal, to flip the church. Now, what I really mean by that is that churches see themselves as agents of transformation in their communities. Instead of just working church improvement plans and trying to get better and slicker and cooler and, more stable and financially secure and the pews filled and all of that. I don't mean that. I mean that churches see themselves as agents of transformation in their communities. And as a result, there are church community partnerships, and the kingdom of heaven, the beloved community, is cultivated in communities all over the world because the church is stepping up and stepping out and being an agent of renewal. That's what I mean by flipping the church from decline to renewal. And as a result, communities all over the world are thriving. People who want shelter have shelter. People who are hungry have food. People belong. People are connected. People with habits and hurts and hangups are healed of those things. That communities are models of places that thrive, where people care about each other, they see each other, that we're not divided by what we don't share in common, but we're united by our common humanity. That's my vision. And I see the church flipping from decline to renewal as a key piece of that, because we are carriers of big, bold visions, because we can believe like Jesus, because we are called to be apostles. So God's already said yes. I want you to know that. God's already flipped the conveyor belt. Now the job is to keep that allowing open and to keep that believing flowing. That's my big vision. What's yours? What would you like to see come on the conveyor belt of blessing to you and to and through you out to the world? Put that in the comment. Let's share some big, bold visions here. What would happen if we were actually believing like Jesus? So, there are wrongs to right, loaves and fishes to multiply in the world, wounds to bind up. But when we start small and practice our faith, practice that allowing, we can move from coffee mugs to a beloved community all over the world. So thank you so much for joining me today on Spiritual Mojo. And if you enjoyed this broadcast, leave a like or a heart on this video, and then share it with your own Facebook profile. Share it with your Facebook friends. Let's get some believing like Jesus going on out in the world, so that conveyor belts of blessing can make their way all the way to the intended destination, and we can allow God's blessing to come to us and through us out to the world. And then share the video link with someone who could really benefit from hearing this message. And lastly, I want to invite you to check out my website, RebeccaSimonPeter.com, and download the Dare to Dream Like Jesus plan. Sign up for How to Create a Culture of Renewal, join our programs, and come be a part of the amazing blessing that's happening in the world. It's a pleasure being with you today. Thank you so much for showing up for Spiritual Mojo. I'll see you guys next time. Take good care.